Hi, I am Jake Mills. I am the founder of national mental health charity Chasing the Stigma. Today I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what's led me to form a mental health charity, what's kind of got me to that point and what we're doing now. I will admit this feels really weird, just speaking to you down a camera. The windows, blinds are open, so if I do keep looking away, it's because I'm trying to keep tabs on the neighbours. Margaret's been out twice already. She said she's putting the recycling out, but do you know what I mean? I'll also just say that if my kids come in at any point, I apologise. My son does make a habit of coming in and telling me that he needs to poo. He is 17, so he should be able to take himself, but you know, just to let you know that might happen as well. So what has led me to create a national mental health charity? Well, first and foremost, I am not a mental health expert, and I've never considered myself to be a mental health expert. I'm just a normal lad who had a normal life, pretty normal upbringing. I say pretty normal. I went to an all-boys school and had really bad acne and glasses and braces, so maybe it was a little bit of a I had to develop a tougher skin throughout school, but I was a happy kid, happy childhood, great family, friends. My background is not in mental health at all, not in charity work at all. It's actually in stand-up comedy. So I started performing stand-up when I was about 18, and went on to perform in comedy clubs right across the country. Loved doing what I was doing. It was always an ambition to do that, and I was doing quite well at it, doing well in different competitions and stuff. And without really knowing anything about it, I went to university and graduated from university, and then after I came out of that and carried on performing and working, and without really knowing anything about it, I started to develop some symptoms of depression. But I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what those symptoms were. I didn't know what those signs were. I probably didn't really even know what depression was, if I'm being totally honest with you. I think I'd heard of it. Well, I had, but I didn't know that it was something that would affect me. And I think that was kind of the difficulty, because I think I just thought that I just wasn't as good as coping with life as what other people were. And I felt like that other people were all feeling the same thing that I was and just were coping with it better. And so I felt embarrassed and ashamed almost to say to people, listen, I know that you feel this way as well, but I'm struggling with it. Or I can't cope as well as you can. I can't deal with life as well as you can. And that made me feel quite, I don't know, embarrassed. So I didn't tell anyone. And I didn't see it as something that could be fixed or an illness of any kind. I just thought it was something that you're going to have to literally, come on, get a grip of. You're going to have to get yourself better. So I bottled it up, like what a lot of men do. I bottled that up, and I thought, if you're going to get better, you've got to do it yourself. And I didn't know how. So I wouldn't say that I became dependent on drink, but I certainly used drink as a way of trying to cope. Because suddenly I felt numb to everything. I felt numb to feelings, I felt numb to emotions, I felt numb to interests, motivation. Anything that I would usually do, I just couldn't feel anything about it. So I thought, maybe if I get drunk, maybe if I have a drink, maybe I can be me. Maybe I can go out, maybe I can be a laugh, maybe I can be around people, maybe I can go to a club, maybe I can meet new people. But it didn't quite work like that, and what happened instead was that the thoughts and the insecurities and the feelings would just come flying out instead, and that would often be as paranoia or as aggression. And it got me into different altercations, into different fights. And one thing that I really struggled with when I was going through depression was the idea of what it meant to be a man. And my idea of being a man was being big, was being strong, was being able to fight, was being able to protect yourself, was being able to go out and pull any girl that you want. That's what I thought being a man was. That's what I thought it was. And I wasn't that man. And I would go into a bar or a pub or anywhere, and I'd feel dwarfed by every single man that I would see, because I'd think that's what a man looks like. That's what a man looks like. I'm just a boy. And so when I would drink, I'd get paranoid about that. And I would think that everybody in the club or in the pub or in the venue would be looking at me, thinking, look at him. And what I started to do is I started to preempt things. Started to preempt somebody saying something to me, somebody laughing at me. And so I'd just go up to them and I'd just start on them. I try and act big. I try and act aggressive, and that is not in my nature at all. And it got me into different situations, and one day it got me into an altercation with a bouncer. And I know most people would be surprised to hear, but I lost that fight. I ended up in hospital getting my head glued back together. And I threatened to sue the bouncer in the club. And as a result of doing that, I was offered counselling. And I don't think if it was just left to me, I would have ever gone and got that help and support. But when it was offered to me on a plate, I thought, I'll take it. Because I thought, something is wrong, something's up. So let's just explore this, let's just have a look. Now, for me, I went to this counselling, and the counsellor herself was great. She made me feel reassured. First person to talk to me as about depression. And she reassured me about going to a doctor, she reassured me about antidepressants, and she built that confidence up in me. I went to a doctor and I went in and I said, I think I'm depressed, I need antidepressants. He said, why do you think that? And I said, because my counsellor told me. And he said, well, I'm the doctor, not her. So I'll tell you what you've got. So I walked out, said, doesn't matter. There was no follow-up or anything like that. I went back to 3 different doctors before one of them actually spoke to me like a person. Asked me if I felt suicidal, which I hadn't, and gave me antidepressants. Now I kept going back to the counsellor, but the problem for me was that I was going to a counsellor for once a week for about half an hour, 40 minutes. And in that time, I was opening up about things that I'd never spoken about before, things I didn't know I needed to speak about before. And I didn't have enough time to close that, to heal. And I would often leave the room feeling more vulnerable than when I went in, because I thought, right, you've opened up about that now, and now you're going to have to wait a week to do it all again. And I didn't like that. So what I started to do instead was lie. I lied to everyone. I lied to my girlfriend, to my parents, to my friends, but I lied to the counsellor as well. I didn't stop going, because I obviously wanted to go, but I lied to her. And I became such a good liar that she discharged me as being fit and healthy and made a great recovery, and I was discharged. And I thought, I don't know what to do. So I just tried to do what I thought you do, which is the things that are generally out there that are told about: exercise, spend time with family, do the things that you want to do, keep working, the things that you enjoy. I exercised, I spent time with family, I was going to football, I was still performing comedy, but nothing helped me. Because in my head, I thought, if you're struggling with your mental health, you've got two solutions. One is antidepressants and the other is counselling. And I've just been discharged from the counsellor. So I thought, that's it. Like, you either try and make yourself better or you live like this forever. There's no alternative. There's no other solution. That's just it. So I tried to do those things and it just wasn't working, and it reached one point one day when out of nowhere I just got an absolutely crystal clear thought in a moment of crisis that said, kill yourself. Now, I'd never thought that before. I'd never even considered anything along those lines before. But I thought about it, and I thought about it from every single angle. I thought about my girlfriend, I thought about my friends, I thought about my family. And I thought, this makes sense for everyone. Not just for me, but for everyone. I thought everyone's lives would be better. And so I did it, or at least I tried. I took myself to a quiet place and I tried to take my own life. Now, there was a moment when a little boy ran past me, and it was quite a significant moment, because that idea of not being a man really hung over me. And the one thing I wanted more than anything in the world was to be a dad. That's just what I always wanted. And I convinced myself so much that I would never be capable of being a dad, that I would never be able to be a dad, that I'd never be able to look after the child. I thought, you can't even look after yourself. That's how pathetic you are. There's no way you will ever be a dad. So when this little boy ran past, I thought, well, you'll never have a son. So you won't be able to change somebody's life. But what you can do is you can help this little boy by preventing him from seeing what you're going through. So when he ran past with his dad, I stopped. It didn't make me reconsider it. If anything, it made me even more sure that it's the right thing to do. And as he got out of sight, I carried on. But at that moment, my girlfriend at the time came round the corner and found me before it was too late. Now, she took me home. We visited by the police. And he sat me down opposite me like this, and he said, "You're not going to die again, are you?" And I said, "No." And he went, "Good." And then he left. And he didn't say, "What if you do feel like you need to do that again?" He didn't say, "Are you receiving any help?" He didn't say, "Do you want me to help you find help and support?" He offered me nothing. He slapped me on the wrist, told me off essentially, made me feel so small at a time when I felt so small anyway. So I phoned a doctor a couple of days later. They had no appointments, so I just done a phone appointment. And he said, I explained, I tried to kill myself. And he said, you want antidepressants? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, just double it. And when I put that phone down, I thought, that's the last time I can ask anyone for help. Now, there was one big difference now, though, is that this time, I wasn't hiding. Because going through that suicide attempt, suddenly, it was out there. My girlfriend knew, my family knew, my parents knew, my friends knew. It was there. And that was probably the difference, I would say. Because this time, I wasn't in it on my own. Now, don't get me wrong, they didn't know what to do. They had absolutely no idea what to do. But them being honest with me and saying, we don't know what to do, but we'll do something, we'll make sure that you're never in this situation again, was probably enough to just pull me through that crisis point. Now, we went away, went on holiday, we took some time, I stopped my medication while we were away, and when we came back I thought, yeah, I'm okay, I'm in a better place, I can rebuild my life. And I started to notice that there was some rumours going about on social media, so one day I just decided I'm going to take this back. I'm going to take control. I'm not going to let anybody have anything over me. I'm not going to let them use this against me. And so I decided to speak out about what I'd gone through. I put it out on Twitter, and I have to be honest, it was not to help anyone. It wasn't to become a campaigner. It wasn't to give hope to people. It wasn't. It was purely as a way of me reclaiming that situation and helping me in my own recovery. But what happened as a result of doing that, like of a series of tweets, is that people started coming to me asking me for help. Hundreds of people. People I knew, people I didn't know. people across the country, different parts of the world. People come to me saying that they wanted help. People come to me saying that they needed help for their loved ones. People come to me saying that they're going through the exact same thing. People come to me saying that they were suicidal, or coming to me asking me for help. Every single time I went on television, radio, anything to talk about my mental health battles, people were coming to me asking me for help. And I had absolutely no idea what to do. But what I did know was that by sharing my story the way that I was, there was one, a responsibility to do something with that. And two, there was hope that I was offering to people. Hope that somebody else has been there and come through it. Hope that there's somebody else who might be able to help, and hope that there's somebody who understands. And that was the key to getting through to people. Because what was happening is people were coming to me, a complete and utter stranger, who they'd heard on the radio or seen in a 2-minute clip on the telly. And they would come to me, finding my details online and telling me really personal information about themselves before going to a loved one or a friend or a doctor. They would come to me. And I could have been anyone. I could have been anyone. And that is when I realised the responsibility that I had, but also that gave me a fire in my belly. That gave me a purpose. And that made me think, I need to do something with this. And so I created Chasing the Stigma. What I didn't want Chasing the Stigma to be was just an awareness raising charity, because in all honesty, I think we're at a dangerous stage of awareness raising, because what's happened over the last couple of years is that awareness and services have been like that, but awareness has gone right up. It's skyrocketed. It is really getting talked about. But then services and help and what to do with that awareness has remained stagnant. And what happens instead is that more and more people are aware, but then they don't know what to do with it. They don't know where to turn. They don't know the steps to take to get help. So I wanted to do something practical. Of course, awareness raising is important, but I wanted to look at this side of things as well. When we started Chasing the Stigma, I remember coming on, I was on the train home from an interview and just getting messages and messages from people and looking into it thinking, I don't know what to do. I have absolutely no idea what to do. People coming to me saying they're struggling, the dad is struggling, the mum is struggling, that they're feeling suicidal, they're about to end their lives and they needed me to talk them out of it. I didn't know what to do. And it scared me that I didn't know what to do, and it scared me that these people thought that I did. And we looked into it, and I looked into the statistics to do with suicide. And those statistics, and certainly one in particular, has remained the same practically over the last number of years. Even in the last, or the latest figures in 2018. So in 2018, of all the people who died by suicide, almost 3/4 of them were not known to mental health services, or had not been seen in more than a year. So there's 72%. 72% of people died without getting any help. Now that's a significant problem. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a number of reasons for that, and it's often quite complex. But I would say one of the biggest differences between our physical and our mental health is with our physical health, we know, we understand, and we trust the process to get better. We know what to do. We don't question it. It's drummed within us from the earliest possible stage of what that process is. That if we feel like we're not feeling well, like we know our bodies enough to know when something's not right, whether it's a niggle, whether it's a feeling. And we assess that ourselves. And we go and we get help. We go to a doctor, we explain how we're feeling, whether we know or we don't know. Whatever they give us, medication, we try it. We don't question it, we don't worry about what it's going to do to us, we'll try it, we trust them. And if it doesn't work, we think, I'll go back, we'll challenge it. If it gets really bad, we'll go to the hospital. With our mental health, we don't know that process. There's the bell. It's a Amazon delivery. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, that's the realities of working from home. So with that process, as I said, with our physical health, we know it, we understand it, we trust it. With our mental health, we don't know it, we don't understand it, and we certainly don't trust it. We've got so many different stigmas attached to it, preventing us from asking for help at an earlier stage, preventing us from disclosing how we actually feel, stopping us from taking medication. There's loads of different things. And it's just not common knowledge to us. Plus, we've got thresholds so high. We've got waiting lists of up to 18 months in some parts of the country that people are waiting too long to get their help and support. And then when they do ask for it, they're on waiting lists for months and months and months. That's not good enough. As well, I would say one of the biggest differences between our physical and our mental health is the perception. So if I was to say to you now the words physical health, I say physical health, what thoughts come to your head? What are you thinking of right now when I say the words physical health? I'm going to make a guess. And I'm going to guess that you are thinking of somebody running, somebody in the gym, somebody in great physical shape, maybe a vision of yourself, maybe an aspiration. If I said the words mental health, what would you think of then? Again, I'm going to guess. You're probably thinking something negative. You're probably thinking of depression, anxiety, somebody in distress, suicide. If I asked you to actually think of a image, it's probably going to be somebody looking upset. That's the difference. With our physical health, we see it as an aspiration. We see it as something that we can aspire to be. We see it as things that we can take steps to look after to better our health. With our mental health, we just think that mental health means mental illness. And as a result, we have this association. And that's the biggest difference. That's where we need to make some change, or a lot of change. So with all that in mind, I wanted to do something practical. So when people come to me asking me for help and I had no idea what to do, I thought, well, straight away, I need to be able to educate myself on the help and support that's available. So that when people are coming to me asking me for help, I can be directing them to somewhere. And I thought that's all it can be. I put out an appeal and I said, if you offer any support at all, tell me who you are and I'll put it together in one little database, just an Excel spreadsheet on my computer in my mum's house. And so when people come to me, I can direct them your way. But then what happened instead is that hundreds of support services started coming to me asking me for help. But what happened instead was that hundreds of support services started to come to me and say, here's our details. And I was like, okay, this is more than I thought. I started to realise just how many support services were out there. Hundreds and thousands. But I didn't know about any of them when I needed them. And I certainly knew that the people coming to me asking for help didn't know about them as well. And then it was a bit of a light bulb moment to say, well, here's how we can make a difference. Because what I realised was that hundreds of people, thousands of people, millions of people were all going through the exact same thing at the exact same time, all feeling like they were the only ones. All feeling like they couldn't tell anyone, all feeling like they couldn't get help, and yet here's all this help and support that's out there. So I thought, well, let's take this database, this spreadsheet, and let's put it together in a website. I met an organisation based in Liverpool called Mashbo, who I told the idea to, and they were, in fact, to be fair, they were the only ones who said, yeah, we can do it. And we built that into a website and then into an app called the Hub of Hope. The Hub of Hope is a free national mental health database. What it will do is it will use your device's location to pinpoint the nearest local support to you wherever you are in the country, to show you the nearest local support as well as national support, to make that help and support as easy as possible to find wherever you are. And do you know what? When we started this and I had the idea, and I spoke to a lot of different people, a lot of different organisations, and I think everybody said there or thereabouts the same type of thing to me, which was, it's going to cost too much, you're starting too big, people have tried to do this before and failed, you're trying to do too much, just basically don't bother. And I just thought, let me try. Do I know what I'm doing? No. Have I ever worked in the sector before? No. But can I try? Absolutely, because people were coming to me asking for help, so I had to. And what we've done now is we've taken that and we've made the Hub of Hope the UK's biggest and most comprehensive mental health signposting tool. The Hub of Hope now is being used by the likes of Samaritans, Mind, Calm, Rethink Mental Illness, NHS trusts, emergency services, prison services, schools, universities, job centres right across this country. Done by one person in his room in his mum's house. I'm not saying that to say, aren't I great? Because I'm not. I'm saying it to say it literally doesn't take a genius to make a difference. All it takes is that commitment, that responsibility, that drive and that fire in the belly to say, let's just do something. Let's just try. If it fails, it fails, but let's try. And I think often we can get caught up in innovation and trying to think of innovation as this great big grand gestures and really expensive and shiny and all the buttons and, you know, this great big grand thing. And do you know what? Innovation's just something new. And making help and support easier to find was new. And we've been able to show that now. So everybody listening to this, watching this, please download the Hub of Hope. Have it on your phone, know about it. But as well, if you have a look and you think there's nothing in my area, or you know of services that exist that aren't registered on the Hub of Hope, tell us. Because we depend on you to allow that to grow. Because we are still an incredibly small charity, dependent almost entirely on public donations. Only up until about 6 months ago, I was the only member of staff with no volunteers. But we've been able to create something, we've been able to make that grow. It's a multi-award winning platform now, but importantly, it's helped over 150,000 people across the country find help and support, and we've done that without any advertising, because it's simple. Now, at Chasing Stigma, we will always say we are not experts. We don't consider ourselves experts. We always consider ourselves just people, just normal people. But I think that's how we can actually make a difference. There's a poster in our office that says talk to people as people. Because I think we can overcomplicate things. We can use jargon and we can use clinical language and we can try and set ourselves apart. But I don't think that actually works. It might do in certain fields, but I think trying to get through to people on a normal, everyday basis is going to take somebody just talking normal, a normal voice, talking in a normal way, engaging communities to talk to each other in their normal way. That's how we can really make that difference, by getting people on the ground. And so with the Hub of Hope, we've always wanted to engage different types of support, not just to have it as one directory for NHS and then have another directory for private and then have another directory for charities and then have another directory for community groups. Let's just have them together in one place. So let's give people all the options. Let them see what's available to them and let people decide what they think is right for them. Whether that is NHS, whether that is a charity, or whether that is just a group who meet once a week to have a cup of tea in the local church. Who am I to say what is right for you? I would rather give you the options and let you see what's available and engage in what you feel is right. But importantly, by giving you those type of options, we're giving you options that you can access whilst you are receiving help from one place or while you're on a waiting list. If you look back at my story, and the doctor would have been giving me antidepressants but a card for the Hub of Hope and said here's help and support available. If the counsellor at the end of that session would have said, you've talked about a lot here, I'm not going to see you till next week, but here's people you can speak to, here's places you can go to, you can deal with everything that we've just talked about and then I'll see you again next week, but you can speak to other people. If the police officer would have done exactly the same but left me with a card for the Hub of Hope and said his options, his support if you ever do feel that way, that could be the difference between me attempting again or not. We've got to give people options. We've got to trust people to pick what they feel is right for them. It can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. So that's what we are trying to do with that. And it's basic. It is basic. But that's what we're about. Covering the basics. With that in mind, and with the amount of people who were struggling without knowing, people like me, I said to you that I was struggling with the signs and symptoms of depression without knowing them. But why would I? How would any of us know the signs and the symptoms? How would any of us know when our mental health deteriorates? How would any of us know what to do if we've never been taught? Quite simply, we wouldn't. And expecting people to is ludicrous. So with that in mind, you know, we've campaigned to say we need to have education in schools, we need to have better education around mental health. But we can't just wait for other people to do it. So we wanted to do something about that. Now, the advice that's generally out there for anyone struggling with their mental health is talk about it. And we see it all the time. We see it on telly, we see it on radio, we see it on Instagram, on Facebook, all the time. Talk to somebody. It's really important to talk. It is important to talk, of course it is. But it's just as important to listen and to do something with that conversation. And so, if somebody did come to you, whether that's your son, your daughter, your best friend, your colleague, anybody, and they followed that advice and they said, I'm talking, I'm struggling, would you know what to do? Now, I'd say the majority of us wouldn't. And so we wanted to do something about that. So I wrote a training program called Ambassadors of Hope. The reason behind that was because I was seeing in a lot of organisations people doing gestures, box ticking. And what they would do instead is they would treat it a little bit like a health and safety, where they'll say, well, we've got 4 mental health first aiders, for example. And you go, okay, that's great. Mental health first aid is a great course, well done. But you've got 500 members of staff and you've got 4 mental health first aiders, which means that you've got 496 members of staff who have no knowledge of mental health, who have no skills to know what to do. What if people don't want to talk to those 4? What if those 4 are struggling themselves? What if people don't want to talk in the workplace at all? What about those 496 members of staff? So we thought, well, let's do something so we can get them. So we developed the Ambassador Hope training program based on this idea that we've carried throughout Chasing Stigma. Do the basics. Talk to people as people. Why weren't people or organisations equipping all members of staff? Too expensive? Too time consuming? Didn't want to take them out of work? Okay, well, what can we do? How can we address that? So we developed the training program, we got it accredited, and we done it all, and we packed it all into 20 to 30 minutes. People say, can you teach somebody to be a mental health expert in 20 to 30 minutes? Absolutely not. Are we trying to make people experts in 20, 30 minutes? No. Do people need to be experts to have a conversation about mental health? No. And that's a problem that we've been facing, is that people feel they have to be qualified to talk to somebody about their mental health. And when people think that they're not qualified, they'll avoid the conversation. Just to make it absolutely clear, unless you are trained to be a mental health expert, it's not your job. It's not your role. You don't have to be an expert. You just need to know the right things to say to encourage somebody to go to that expert. And that's what the Ambassador Hope training program aims to do. So with the training program, we're saying you don't have to be an expert, but all you have to do is offer somebody hope. Be an ambassador of hope. Offer them that hope. If someone came to you asking for help, just so you've got the skills to know what to say, to know what to do, and how to encourage them to get to an expert. That's all your role is. It's not to fix that person's problems. But by doing it in the way that we have, we've been able to go to an organisation and say, let us train everyone. Let us train all your staff. Not just a handful. Everyone. Let's create an environment of understanding throughout an organisation so that everyone has the skills. And we've been able to do it. We started with Everton Football Club, who started with the board, the chief executive, director of football, and trained everyone throughout the organisation, right down to matchday stewards, which was just over 500 members of staff. We then went to a construction firm in the northwest called the Regenda Group, who trained all their members of staff, which was 700 members of staff, including all new recruits. And then we went to the Disclosure and Barring Service, who trained all their members of staff across the different sites, which was 900 members of staff. We've been able to roll this out across local authorities, across private firms, across charities, across travel, working closely with the Premier League, to working with sports. We're able to roll this out to everybody. We've trained over 5,000 people in just over a year. And again, doing it in a way that is not trying to patronise people. We're just helping people out in the most normal way that we can, but covering the basics. And by doing that, alongside the Hub of Hope, we can make a real difference. Because we can offer people hope. We can offer people an alternative. We can offer people help and support, and we can reassure people that they can have a conversation. And by equipping people with those skills, we're able to let them know the signs and the symptoms after themselves or in somebody else, and engage in a conversation and ask people at the earliest possible stage about their mental health. That intervention and that prevention can be key in preventing people from reaching crisis points and becoming dependent on a service that they have to wait months for. That's how we make a difference. And again, to come from somebody having to go through something to see the void. We shouldn't have to go through that to see it. But as long as that we have people like the people we work with and the charities and an organisation like ourselves who are willing to use their own stories to make that difference, to get something out there, their own experience of loss or pain, they're the people who can make the real difference. And we'll always encourage that. I've always said about Chasing Stigma is that I want Chasing the Stigma to be a voice of people. I want us to use our platform to allow other people's voices to be heard. And so anybody can come to us at any point, tell us their experience, tell us what they see as the problem, and we'll do what we can to help to fix that. Now, I talked about feeling like I'd never be a dad. I talked about my girlfriend at the time pulling me out of the car. That girlfriend is now my wife, and we've got 2 children, Teddy and Nancy, in our own house, living a life that not only did I think was impossible, but I felt I just didn't ever deserve. I look at my life now, I look at my kids, I look at my wife, and there's no way of being able to describe to you just how impossible that felt. I'd seen things of people who'd been in a bad way and come through it and come through their other side and then suddenly had a great life. I knew other people had done that, but there was no way I could ever be convinced that I would. And I look at them now and I think just how close I was to them never existing. And so for me, they are a symbol of hope. They are proof of an alternative. They are proof that no matter how bad it seems, no matter how dark, no matter how impossible it might seem, giving yourself that chance, things can turn around. And they will. Now, the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week is kindness. And I look back at my story and I look at what we've been able to achieve since. And I think about kindness. And I think for me, the greatest form of kindness is offering hope. Hope is what we all need to get us through any situation. No matter how bad a situation might be, as long as there's a glimmer of hope that we can get through it, that can keep us clinging on to that hope. And when we talk about somebody who may be in distress, who might be in crisis, who may be struggling so much with their mental health, they might not see that hope. They might not be able to see that glimmer. And the kindest thing that anybody can do is to offer that hope, offer that support, offer that chance. Be kind. Know that people are going through things without you knowing. But offer that hope to them. And that will be the kindest thing you can ever do. Now, that was probably a bit depressing, ironically. So I apologize if it was. What I will say is that if anybody ever needs help, we've got the Hub of Hope. If anybody wants to speak to us, speak to me, speak to the team about anything, you can do. If you go on chasingstigma.co.uk, and we're happy to try and hear the problems that are out there and do something to fix it. So if you've got any questions or anything that you think that we should know, tell us. We'll always be there. We don't always know the answers. We're working it out as we go. We're an incredibly small team with not really any funding, but we're able to make a difference, and so are you. So believe in yourself, be kind to yourself, and be kind to others. Thank you very much for listening, and I don't really have an ending, so bye.